Good afternoon. Good afternoon. As promised, I'm very pleased to be joined by Zainab Hawa Bangura, the Secretary General Special Representative on Sexual Violence in Conflict, who is here to talk to us about the trip to South Sudan. Ms. Bangura, welcome. Always a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I recently conducted my first mission to South Sudan from 5th to 11th October. The purpose of my visit was to assess for myself the situation of sexual violence in the country by engaging with a wide range of stakeholders and hearing from survivors firsthand what they had experienced. I concluded my visit with the signature of a joint communique with the government of South Sudan, which outlines clear steps the government will take to prevent and address these crimes, including issuance and enforcement of clear orders through the army chain of command prohibiting sexual violence, and assistance for survivors, and detail how the UN will support the government to help it fulfill its commitments under the agreement. We have copies of as well as civil society partners and UN entities. Government representatives with whom I had meetings included President Salva Kiir, the Undersecretary of Foreign Affairs, the Minister of Justice, the Minister of Health, the Minister of Defense, the Minister of Information, the Minister of Cabinet Affairs, the Inspector General of Police, the Speaker of Parliament, and the Chairman of the South Sudan Human Rights Commission. I also spoke with women's groups, service providers, and journalists. I also met with Dr. Riek Machar, leader of the Sudan People's Liberation Army in opposition in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, to remind him of the command responsibility he bears and to urge him also to issue a communique that clearly expresses the action that he will take to prevent sexual violence that is being committed by his group. I also traveled to Bentiu, the capital city of Unity State, to engage with humanitarian workers, local authorities, the local commander of the SPLA, UN staff, and survivors of sexual violence. Bentiu State in April 2014, hundreds of civilians were killed, targeted for death based on their ethnic origins and assumed political affiliation, and also the city had changed hands 8 times. In my 30 years of experience, I've never witnessed anything like what I saw in Bentiu. The IDPs seeking refuge there face a combination of chronic insecurity, unimaginable living conditions, acute day-to-day protection concerns, and rampant sexual violence. Survivors feel like they have no one to turn to report the crimes that are committed against them. The character of sexual violence crimes is shocking. In the words of one woman activist I spoke to, it is not just about rape. It is to inflict unimaginable pain and destruction. Survivors and healthcare workers told me heartbreaking stories of rape, gang rape, abduction, sexual slavery, and forced marriage. Those who try to fight back against their attackers are often raped with objects instead. Some victims have even been raped to death. Victims include women, men, girls, and boys. According to the statistics given to me by the Juba Hospital, 74% of victims are below the age of 18. The youngest victim they had treated is 2 years old. I am particularly concerned about the lack of multi-sectorial assistance for the care of victims of sexual violence, including medical and psychosocial services. I'm also concerned about the lack of reporting of this crime due to the closure of government offices, insecurity in the country, malfunctioning police services, a lack of capacity by the police and medical service providers to respond appropriately to the needs of survivors, and by the social stigma associated with sexual violence, all of which contribute to a climate of impunity. During my trip, I reminded all parties to the conflict, including government forces and opposition groups, that their crimes will be punished by both national and international courts. And I would like to reiterate that here. Sexual violence in conflict can constitute a war crime and crime against humanity, and it will be dealt with the gravity it deserves. I also raised concern with both parties to the fact that as a liberation movement, the SPLA had a zero tolerance on this issue and developed mechanisms to punish perpetrators. But as a free country, it has become systematic, which is like declaring war on your own people. I made clear to the government that my office and the entire UN system are committed to helping the people of South Sudan to put an end to sexual violence in conflict in the country. And we stand ready to support them in any way necessary to end the horrible devastation of this crime. We know from centuries-long experience the consequences of these crimes. We know that widespread sexual violence committed during conflict sows a seed whose tree will bear the poison fruits of reparation, reprisal, recrimination, and revenge for generations to come. South Sudan has a unique opportunity to avoid the pain that so many other countries have endured by eradicating this scourge now and taking a different course. For me, I think the time is now, the choice is theirs, and our intention is to work with them to be able to address this problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Bangura. Sherwin?
Thank you. On behalf of the UN Correspondents Association, welcome back from South Sudan. It's good to see you and thank you for the briefing. My name is Sherwin Bryce, SABC News, South Africa. My question is to do about accountability. You mentioned international justice. But given the levels of impunity that you're seeing, you talk about women being raped to death. Why are you not making an immediate appeal to the Security Council to pass a resolution and refer under Chapter 7 South Sudan to the ICC for investigation? It seems that the impunity has been ongoing. We know that the Secretary General has even made statements about how this is a man-made crisis in South Sudan that goes right up to the leadership. Why is the UN not taking a more proactive approach in this regard?
I'm in the process of starting to debrief members of the Security Council, and I think on the 22nd there is a Security Council in South Sudan. I'm hoping that I'll be able to engage with them. I'll definitely tell them what I saw, and I'll provide the necessary indication of what needs to be done.
What do you believe needs to be done, if I may follow up?
Well,
do you think ICC referrals are the question for now?
Well, I think that's a decision for the Security Council to make. You know, for me, my job is to be able to put the facts on the table, to let them know the gravity, and to let them also be able to understand that we have to address the problem of impunity with South Sudan. There's nothing we can do otherwise, because we can't continue seeing the people suffer as they are. So definitely the problem of impunity has to be addressed.
Elaine?
Ellen Ratner from Talk Radio News Service. I also have a project in South Sudan. So my question is the following. A lot of this is due to war and due to the conflict between both. But there is a culture where women are abused regularly. Men have many wives. Sexual violence is just de rigueur. It's part of what happens in South Sudan. Women are not regarded as having their own rights. How do you change the whole culture of the country? And then, of course, part of the conflict, because women are abused, period, within their own, even in peacetime.
I do agree with you, and I know that if you do not respect your women in times of peace, you cannot protect them in conflict. And this is the reason why one of the support we give to countries is actually deploy the team of experts on the rule of law and sexual violence. And we look at the laws, the constitution, the penal code, and definitely as soon as we have signed this agreement, within the next 1 month or two, we will be deploying a team that will look at the whole framework. And I also, during my visits in South Sudan, I also communicated with the head of UN Women to see what we all need to do together to work. So I agree with you that the position of women is a problem. We have to address it. And sometimes it gives an opportunity when you deal with sexual violence, because you also attack the law. You look at the legal framework, and definitely that's what comes first. So we use a holistic approach in terms of working with the police and making sure that gender-based violence units are created at each and every police station. This is a crime that is commanded, so it can be controlled. It's not a crime that happened by accident. That's the reason why we try to work with people to make sure you give the command order to ensure that structures and systems are put in place. And when this crime is committed, it has to be investigated. And when it is investigated, it has to be prosecuted.
One just follow up. How about trying to get some female police officers?
Yes, definitely. That's what I had that discussion with the Inspector General of Police. He told me that the Norwegian had actually funded in terms of building a training center for women, but somehow the resources, I don't want to say, the resources had stopped coming in. And so we told him that we're going to have a plan of action develop with him once this agreement has been signed. And part of the things that we recommend is an increase in the number of women in the police force and providing adequate training for them. So that comes on the details of the activities that we're going to do.
Thank you. Matthew?
Sure. Thanks a lot. Matthew Lee, Intercity Press, on behalf of the Free UN Coalition for Access. Thanks for the briefing. I know that it said that you met with Rick Machar, and I wanted to, so one, if you could say where things stand in terms of either having a kind of a program or some kind of an agreement. Also, Peter Gadet, is it your understanding that these are forces under the control of Rick Machar? Are there other armed groups other than those controlled by Rick Machar? And just finally, since you were talking about, these are crimes that will be prosecuted internationally if they're not dealt with nationally, I wanted to ask you again about the Minova rapes in DRC. What's your understanding as the SRSG of, is that from the UN's position, are 2 convictions for 130 rapes, is that sufficient? And if not, what are the ramifications in terms of the UN's partnering with the DRC army? Thank you.
We had very detailed discussion with Rick Machar. My staff also met his people subsequently the next day, and we're still continuing the discussion. He gave us very detailed information on where he commands his troop. From the discussion I had with him and discussion with with my staff, it appears to us that he has a lot of control because he knows who is where they are, what they are doing. I mean, it's very organized, the way he described it to us. I'm not on the ground, I don't know. But from the indication, what he said to us, it looks like a very organized structure he's got. And he told us exactly what he will try to do, how he will do it. So the discussion are still continuing on what really we want him to do. But that's the impression I got. With regard to the Minova, I think it's difficult for me to say I'll talk from the UN point of view. I have to talk on my personal, in the sense that it's different areas are handled. But my experience, and which is the reason why the UK sponsored the development of the protocol on investigation. With rape, when it happens, you need to investigate it within 72 hours. When you investigate it, you need to be able to collect the evidence. You need to protect the evidence. And if you are not able to protect that evidence, then you'll have a difficulty in terms of prosecution, which is one of the reasons why we're deploying the team of experts in countries and we're training people. And I think with the Minova, one of the challenges we had when we engaged the military was the fact that the evidence that they had at that time was very difficult. And it creates a lot of problem. And again, this is why we're talking to NGOs, because sometimes they're on the front line of treating these people. How do you make sure there is a collaboration between the NGOs and the later prosecution process? People have their own different things. So I think and that's what I said to the Minister of Defense. I said, you made mistakes with the Minova, and I think you should have provided the leadership that was required to make sure that these cases were investigated right from the beginning. When you lose that window of opportunity, it becomes extremely difficult. We're still having the problem with Bosnia, where 40 to 50,000 women still waiting for justice. I mean, how do you have evidence that this woman was raped 20 years ago? So these are the challenges we have in this area, and this is the reason why Security Council Resolution 1888 actually created the team of experts to train the people in country to be able to make sure that when a crime occurs, you immediately step in to give access to the victims so they can access medical facilities, and that medical facility can collect the evidence. Now we try with UNICEF and UNFPA to provide PEP kits, which they give out in countries, so that as soon as this thing happens, you have. So with regards to the rest of it, I think it's difficult because my area basically is completely different. I'm not dealing with the issue of the relationship between the FARDC and the government. That's a different division that is dealing with. I think that they will be able to answer that question adequately.
Thank you. Evelyn?
Yes, you mentioned that let's get back to South Sudan. You mentioned that crime is commanded. By whom would that be? And secondly, are all sides committing sexual violations, rape, or so forth? Or can you pin this on a particular group, or is it everybody?
I think as far as we're concerned, from the evidence we had, both parties have committed the crimes. I mean, when I met Riek Machar, everybody, of course, is saying I didn't. You know, I was not there. The government is in control of this area. You can't. But this is an area that has changed hands 8 times. So it's going to be extremely difficult to pinpoint that you did this at this time, at this period. But we know that throughout the process or the time they've been there, sexual violence has been committed. When I talk about command, I'm talking about the issue of sexual violence generally. That's why we say it's systematic, because normally it's the order that is given that this have to be done. In the case of South Sudan, we know that people were raped because of their ethnicity. So if people are raped because of their ethnicity, it means that somebody has instructed. So generally, our idea why we insist on giving the command order, because it's a crime that is commanded. People instruct their people below. We're not talking about any particular country. If you can do that to say you rape those people because of the ethnic group they belong to the area, therefore you can also give the order to stop the rape. And you can actually put structures in place. So that's why I said, because it is commanded, it can be also stopped. Because the same order that you're given it to be perpetrated, you can also give the order to stop it. And then you can let people know that if you commit this crime, we'll investigate you, we'll punish you, we'll take action against you. And in most of the country we're working with, especially where we have incidents of the military committing this crime, we try to support the military justice system so that they also can take action within the military.
Thank you. Stefano?
Yes, thank you very much for being here. For what we're listening today from you, it looks like that for doing well your job, and probably be even more effective, you need some help from us, from the media. Because from what you're saying in this moment, it looks like the people that you talk with, they committing crime against human rights, and you just say that there is a command, chain of command. Now, we're seeing, for example, the international community reacting to the crimes that ISIS or ISIL is doing against women and against population. But we don't hear that about in South Sudan. At least we don't see a lot of coverage. We don't see when there are situations in some part of the world happening, same thing or even worse, attention from the media. So what you will tell us today to do better our job to try to help in your work?
Thank you very much. The media is a very strategic partner, especially the media here, because in most of those countries, the media have a challenge of actually coming out and criticizing things. I mean, every country I go, I always make sure I talk to the media, but sometimes they have problems of understanding. They have investigative limitation. Most of the areas they cannot access because of insecurity. So, which is the reason why we try to work with the media here. Secondly, I think at this particular time in the history of the UN, we have so many challenges. I mean, everywhere, whether it's Ebola, whether it's Syria, whether it's Iraq, whether it's Darfur, whether it's Libya, whether it's Central African Republic. And so that's one of the reasons why I decided to go to South Sudan. My predecessor had not been able to go there, and it's one of our countries. And since December, when we started receiving the information from the Human Rights, the Office of High Commissioner for Human Rights on some of the stories that are coming, I thought that it's good for me to come so that I can raise the awareness, the level of awareness for people to understand this crime is not forgotten. I mean, there are so many atrocities because they have this gap with everybody focusing on other countries. So it goes away, and the victims then, which means they continue to hide in the shadow. And I think it will do justice to the victims who are being raped on a daily basis to bring out the information for them. Like I said in my statements, I mean, I come from Sierra Leone. I worked in Liberia. I've been to Central African Republic. I've been to DRC several times. What I saw in Bentiu, I tell you, if you go there is no way it is acceptable. It's just unbelievable. I mean, it's just because of one reason. It is the chronic insecurity. It is the protection issue. It is the situation where the POC is situated in the middle of mud. I mean, women who live or people who live in the POC, they come out from their bed, they actually step on the mud. You know, from your bed you step on the mud. So anybody you know in a refugee, whether in Syria and you in the camp, you sit down from your bed, you eat with your children, you do everything on the floor. You can't do it because you actually put your foot knee level mud. That's how bad it is with mosquitoes and everything. It's just unbelievable. And then this POC are surrounded by the SPLA, and at the back of the SPLA, maybe 500 years or so, you have the opposition. So when these people start fighting, the bullet goes over your head. And every time you see the series of checkpoints, when you come from the POC to, everybody from the town has migrated to the POC. They've gone and settled in the POC. And you see several checkpoints. So this women, when they go to get firewood, then they are raped. They even go to have a bath in the stream, they're raped. It's just unbelievable. And I think that's, for me, is the combination of all those factors that make this place a terrible place, where on a daily basis, these people, when they start firing, they fire over at you. So you're right in the middle of them. You are caging. And that's the problem. Why? So I will be extremely honored and happy if we raise the awareness, because these are leaders who need to know that the world is watching them, that they cannot subject their people to such conditions. It's unacceptable.
Thank you. Anna?
Thank you, Stefan. And thank you, Ms. Bangura, for this press conference and for all of your activities. Up till now, we talked about crime and aftermath, like consequences, investigation, proof, and everything. But they say the best way to help a victim of a sexual violence is to prevent them from becoming victims. Could you please talk a little bit about these prevention mechanisms? And also, speaking of crime and punishment, was anybody ever punished for these crimes? Do we have precedents so we can scare these people into normal behavior, into respecting people's lives and dignity? And also, if it's possible, could you give us some statistics? Which are the worst countries in terms of these heinous crimes these days? Thank you.
I start from the last question. I think each country is unique, it's different. One rape for me is too much. And I think different types of rape have taken place. So it's difficult for me to tell you this country is worse than the other country. I treat each country individually. I try to deal with them with the problems that they have. The problem in South Sudan is extremely serious because, as I said, in combination of insecurity, the conditions of living where this POC live, and then, of course, the day-to-day protection issue where a woman cannot get out of the POC because maybe 100 years from there you have a checkpoint of the SPLA and you need to go and get firewood. So that's why this is a very difficult, complicated issue, and it's different. And it's also because the two governments split and they're fighting each other. So it's not like you have in the DRC where you have 50 or 60 militia, which means you have a large number of people committing this crime. You have foreign troops who are in DRC. So each one is different. And I think for me, that's the issue really we have to look at. And I think with the prevention, that's why we're working with the military, because somehow protection has to be provided. You know, you have to be able to make sure that this people cannot be vulnerable in specific area. We know where women become vulnerable. We know that when they're in refugee camps, when they go to take firewood or they go to get water, whether it's Darfur, whether it's South Sudan, whether it's the DRC, they become more vulnerable. We know they are vulnerable when they are put together in refugee camps and ID camps. So we can determine the areas of vulnerability, and we can work either with our own peacekeepers to provide the support or engage government to be able to know, or take punitive action, because punishing the perpetrator by itself is deterrent, because then people know that this is a crime that is punishable. If you commit the crime, wherever you are, whoever you are, you can be punishable by law. So these are the things that issue. This is a crime, as you said. The ICC has recognized it, and most of the indictments, including the charge still on a lot of leaders, now they have included it in those indictments. So there are examples to say that this is not a crime only that can be tried at the local law, but the ICC has recognized it as part of the crimes that they investigate when they go into each and every country. And so that has given us also a cover for people to know that in case you are indicted by the ICC, you have to understand that this is a crime that the ICC is looking at, and it's a crime that they are developing their own skills as time goes on. And we try to work with governments, whether it's in the DRC, in other countries, to actually make sure that this is a crime that they need to pay attention to. I mean, we can try as many people as we can at the international level, but until we make sure at the national level it's recognized as a crime, it's punishable, and you put in place the mechanism to make sure that you punish perpetrators, you investigate, As I said, you collect the evidence, you protect the evidence, and you present the evidence in a court of law. So that's the reason why, again, we're working with a team of experts to be able to make sure we work very strongly with the judiciary in each and every country. So once we sign the framework agreement, which we have signed, the communique, we will go back to bring together all the different stakeholders, the judiciary, the Ministry of Health, the police, the military, to be able to see what you need each stakeholder to do. The Justice Ministry will ensure that the laws are right and they can be prosecuted. And we train judges, magistrates, and we train the police because they do, a lot of them do the investigation. So those are the processes which we embark on. But this is just the beginning of the visits, of the agreements, and then we'll deploy a team within the next 1 month that will actually sit with everybody across the country to put together an action plan for every unit, and then from there we move forward.
Matthew, then
Just
Carla.
one clarification.
We don't have much time.
Do you have precedents or not yet?
Chancellor, we have precedents in the crisis group we have. And even DRC, most of the prosecutions and the indictments actually include sexual violence.
Matthew.
Hi, my name is Matthew Carpenter. I'm a reporter for Yomiuri Shimbun, a Japanese newspaper. My question is, you said earlier a lot of victims don't feel they have anyone they can turn to. Is that true, including the United Nations? And what is the reputation in South Sudan as an entity that women can turn to, both victims and those threatened by violence?
Well, who they can turn to, the issue is one of the biggest. For me, the weak link that I have seen in this job after being here 2 years is the service providers, because they are the frontline people. Once you are raped, the first person you need to go to is somebody who can actually provide medical services to you. And once they provide, they collect the evidence. Because some of the women are so badly damaged, if they don't get access to medical services, they don't. If you go to a place like Bento, there is no hospital. Yes, there are NGOs working there, but they have a shell, a little bit tent, and very limited scope because the place is so dangerous. People are not there. That's the biggest challenge we have. The government health service is not working. So the UN work there, but they're very limited resources. Now with the challenge all over the world, I think we're having very, very little resources actually put into service provision. That's why we're asking everybody to make sure you give at least the basic health services and the psychosocial support. The issue of justice comes after that, because if you don't collect those evidence, you don't treat the person, you don't get her to go through trauma counseling, she will not stand in a court of law to give evidence about somebody who's raped her.
Thank you, Carla. Microphone, please.
Thank you for the briefing. You mentioned that both commanding sides in this civil war have actually ordered rape as a weapon of war. Where would you begin to hold either side accountable? Because those who are obeying orders could say they were obeying orders. So how many people would actually be held accountable, or would it be the leader who dictates that this is to be done for victory?
I said in the South Sudan, both parties have committed sexual violence. Then I said rape as a weapon of war is commanded. Rape as a weapon of war, not particularly to South Sudan, as a weapon of war is commanded. And therefore, we can control it. Because if it is commanded, instruction is given. It doesn't matter where it happens. It means that what you need to do is to get the commanders in any situation you are working to give the command order that this is something you have to stop. It is unacceptable, it is punishable by law. So that's the content which I spoke about, the command order. It is a crime as a weapon of war, it's commanded. Officers, wherever they are. With regards to South Sudan, I said that it's a crime that is committed by both parties in the conflict. So it's not about the commanders in South Sudan giving the command order. It's about both parties have committed a crime, and wherever it occurs, it's actually as a weapon of war, it's commanded. Command order is given for people who are committing the crime to commit it. And this is the reason why when we're trying to put an end to it, we insist as part of the first issue is to give the command order to stop it and to let the people know that they are punishable if they commit the crime. They will be investigated, and if they're found guilty, they will be punished. that's what we try to work on.
One last question in the back? Nope. Okay, thank you. Nope. Time for one more, yeah.
Ms. Bangura, you spoke about raping reported within 72 hours, and clearly that has not happened in a number of cases. So clearly the question of retrospective justice falls flat.
It's a challenge we have to deal with. That's one of the problems we're dealing, and like I said, that's the reason why the British, through the William A. Initiative, actually developed a protocol for investigation and documenting. It's important for us to work with people, to work with civil society, to work with NGOs, to work with the police, to work with everybody. If we're going to try to put an end to it, we must make sure that when a crime is committed, the person has immediate access. Again, which is one of the reasons why I'm actually campaigning, saying the weak link in my job is services, is the provision of services, because victims need to have access to medical services within 72 hours and psychosocial trauma. And that's the biggest challenge I have in this job, because a lot of victims don't have access, and then you can treat them, but you have a problem in a court of law to say, how did I find out this is rape?
And that's where the record becomes.
Yes.
Thank you very much.